talking about using visual media this time, using visual media. So that's our topic for class today. That's what we'll be discussing in class. So just a heads up, what's going to happen is I'm going to run over the chapter using visual media. I'm going to let you take a quiz, because today is our quiz week, okay? And today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to actually have you take a paper quiz. I am testing things out, how things work. I had a chance to observe you guys on 2 quizzes on the computer, see how well you do on the paper quiz. Okay, so I like to compare. Today is the day. It's on the syllabus. You should use the syllabus as your guide for what's actually happening in class. So heads up, looking forward, what's going on. So as I said, this is week 12. We had the student fall festival week, which kind of set us off. So if you look at the syllabus, you'll see that week 12 is supposed to be break week. Well, guess what? There's no break week because the student fall festival took that over. So that's gone. So we're going to be back on track next week. All the numbers in the syllabus are going to keep going back to where they're supposed to be. So that means a week after this week is when you're going to start doing your speeches. Yeah. So that means I need you to start working now on getting your speeches prepped. Now, we have on week 13 we have a speech coming up using PowerPoint. Okay, PowerPoint or any presentation software you want to use. I really don't care what you want to use. You want to bring your laptop, you want to hook it up to this screen and use it. It has a so as long as you have like a HDMI. Okay, HDMI is all you need. If you get a Mac, bring your own cord, because this thing doesn't have a Mac cord. So that's what I do. I bring my own cord. So you'll be expected to do a speech on the topic, introducing yourself, actually. The speech topic is very simple. Who am I, where do I come from? In fact, what I'm going to do for you today is after you guys take the quiz, I'm actually going to do a sample speech for you. I'm going to do exactly what I want you to do next week for me. But I'm going to do it for you this week to give you an idea of what am I expecting. So if you come up with a speech that's kind of sort of similar to what I did, then you do great. That's the idea. So you remember that in this class, I always try to show to you how to do it and then ask you to try to do it yourself. So that's the only way you're going to learn skills. So in week 13, you're going to have a speech to inform using PowerPoint presentations. Hey, come on in. Look at this. Did you bring anything for me?
Yeah, you.
You guys going to stay hydrated and caffeinated? That's good. Thank you. You're awesome. So basically, that's our plan. You guys just walked in. I was telling them what's happening. That today we're going to talk about chapter 11 using visual media, and next week we're going to do speeches to inform. So please keep that in mind. I need you to work on your speeches to inform. Okay. So that's what's coming up on the syllabus. So please be ready for that. Any questions about your speech to inform? Any questions? What do you think? Script? Script, right here. Remember, your script is your PowerPoint. And I'm going to talk about it today. How to actually use your PowerPoint as your own script. You don't need anything to write. Your PowerPoint is your speech. Except you don't want the PowerPoint to speak for you. You want the PowerPoint to go along with you. So I'll explain today about how to use visual media effectively. That's what today's chapter is about, okay? Now, week 14, after that, comes speeches to persuade, okay? And on that week, you will be doing a speech to persuade. What do I expect from you on speech to persuade? I want you to argue against or for climate change, or global warming, or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. You guys understand what we're talking about. Everybody talks about climate change, global warming. The seas are rising, the ice is melting, we're polluting the whole earth, we're going to destroy everything, in 10 years we're going to be having to move to the moon because we destroyed everything, right? That's what everybody talks about all the time. They tell you recycle, they tell you do this, do that, do this. So I want you to take a side on this issue, on this idea of global warming or climate change, and I want you to argue your side. I don't care which side you take, because I'm not grading you on how, whether I agree with you or not. I am grading you on how well do you do. How well are you going to do arguing? Are you going to convince me to join your side or not? That's what I'm looking for. So if you present a convincing case, guess what? You get an A. If you don't convince neither me nor your classmates, then, well, you won't get an A. All right? So that's a speech to persuade in week 14. Then in week 15, we're going to talk about argumentation and critical thinking a little bit more. We'll have another quiz, which you know how our system is. We go through several chapters, we have a quiz, so the same thing is going to happen. Chapters 12 through 14, we'll have a quiz on that. And then the last week, there is no reading for last week, but you do have to show up to take a final exam, okay? And final exam is a lot like quizzes, by the way. Actually, it's not that different from the quizzes. Actually, final exam has the same exact material that all your quizzes had before. It's just now you're going to see it all together all at once. I'm going to take an entire semester worth of quizzes. I'm going to pick the questions that I think are most important, and it's the same questions you've answered before. So if you need a study guide, well, your study guide are your previous quizzes. That's the idea, okay? It's the same questions. I just want to make sure that you haven't forgotten, and whatever you have missed, that you have made up for that. It's really that simple. So no stress on that. It's the same material all over. And as I said, there's no reading on week 16. Now, any questions you have for me on your speeches to, first speech next week is to inform. How long? 5 minutes. If you can do 5 minutes, that'd be great. I don't need you to do longer than 5 minutes, because in 5 minutes, you should be able to say a whole lot. Now, if you need a little longer, if you want to take 7 minutes, I'd be okay with that. We don't have a big class. When I teach a class that's like 30 students and everybody takes 5 minutes, you know how much time it takes? But with this class, you can go a little longer, I don't mind. If you need more time, take it. But if you can stick to 5 minutes, 6 minutes, that'd be great. So let's put it this way, anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes, you're fine with that. That's a good time frame to make your case. So in the first speech, you'll be making your acquaintance, and in the second speech, you'll be arguing a point. So first speech is all about you, very simple, and I will demonstrate to you exactly what I want you to do by doing my own.
The topic is about us. Who am I?
Who am I, where am I from, kind of an idea. How big? You're going to see how big, because I'm going to do mine. And I'm going to do mine in 5 minutes or less. But you are going to learn things about me in this speech. And you're going to know so much more about me than you know right now, let's put it that way, in just a few minutes that I'll tell you. So you can focus on yourself in a variety of different ways. You can define yourself with a catchphrase. There is something special about each one of you guys. I do believe that. Each one of you is unique and special, and there's something special about you, and there's something perhaps that defines you, okay? I don't know what it is. Maybe one of you is going to stand up and say, hey, I am the class techno geek, because whenever everybody's computer breaks, they come to me. I fix it. Or you may stand up and say, here, I'm the tallest guy in the crowd. And that becomes your definition of yourself. However you want to define yourself is fine with me. Because really, it's about you. However you see yourself or however you want other people to see you is what I'm really expecting in this speech. So I'll share with you my speech and the title of my speech, and you'll understand kind of where I'm going with that. All right. So on the speech to persuade, the same thing. On the speech to persuade, no media, no PowerPoints. Okay? That means just you speaking to us. But same length, 5 to 7 minutes, and this time you argue the point. Okay? So there's a clear difference between a speech to inform and a speech to persuade. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it today and next week, and hopefully we'll get that worked out. But if you want to know the difference, simply read chapters 12 and 13. Get yourself a little preview, and that way, if you read those chapters, you'll have a much easier way of writing a speech, a proper speech, because they will tell you what the difference is between those speeches, and the expectations are different, but same length, slightly different topics, but an entirely different approach of how you're going to proceed with your speech. Okay, so any questions about speeches that you guys have? Any questions about upcoming weeks, the assignments that you have coming up? Okay, we're good? I try to clarify everything, by the way, in my syllabus. If you ever wonder, if you ever have a question about an assignment, always go to my syllabus and read after the schedule. I describe all the assignments and I tell you exactly what I want you to do. So occasionally I make a tiny little adjustments and things like that on the fly, depending on who's in a class and how we're doing, but most of the time the syllabus pretty much stays the same. All right, let me fix I got you guys marked. I'll make sure I mark you present here. Excellent. All right. So as I said, we'll do a quiz today. In the second part of class, it's going to be a paper quiz, and then after that, I'll do the little bit of a presentation for you guys to kind of give you a clue of what I'm looking for next week from you. All right, so let's get into the chapter. So today's chapter is chapter 11. Sir, you have a question? Huh? You have a question? No? Okay. Because if you do, please ask. And in English, of course, because then I'll understand it. Okay. Thank you. All right. So chapter 11, ladies and gentlemen. And on page 172, the authors begin to introduce to us this idea of using visual media in your speech. Now, some of us, well, most of us have already seen people using visual media in speeches all the time because it is very popular. It's quite common for people to use visual media. And so there are two major ways in which visual media enhances your presentations, okay? And what it does, the authors note right here in the introductory point, it aids the listener's comprehension and memory, and number two, visual aids persuade and impact to, they add an impact to your message. So basically, to put it in other words, it makes it easier to understand when I show you something versus just tell you about it, and then it adds more force or more impact to your point. If you want to make a point, sometimes a picture is worth, in America they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So rather than telling you all these things, I just show you picture one time and you can understand everything that I was going to say. And I can save a little bit of time in saying that because your visual impact is going to be actually greater than me trying to describe it. Okay? So that's what visual media does. Two major ways. Help you understand better and then create a greater impact on your audience. Whether you're trying to convince them or persuade them in anything or simply inform them, it just creates an impact. So Is it true that picture is worth 1,000 words? Absolutely is. I believe so. However, I have to say that you have to use the right picture, number one. What if you use the wrong picture? Is it worth it? It's worthless, actually. You can use the wrong picture. Or you can use a picture in the wrong way. That's as well. So, but if you do use visual media, whether it be a picture, an object, or something like that, it's all about people understanding you better, because you're trying to clarify your message, not to confuse people with it. Now, imagine if you use a visual aid that actually confused people with it. That would be very, very bad. It would be working against your purposes, your own very desire to be clear and succinct. So, let's put it this way. Visual aids can be very useful, but it doesn't mean that they will. Some people use visual aids very badly. In fact, I'm going to show you a video in class, maybe not today, maybe another day. I'll show you a video in class of a person using a visual aid and doing a really bad job. If I have time today in class, I'll show you of a person using a visual aid doing really good. I'll see. Maybe we'll see how much time we have. Okay, so several things that the media does for you. As we spoke, clarity, and another is impact. If you're trying to persuade somebody, if you're trying to explain something, there's a much greater impact with visuals. Now, visuals can heighten the persuasive impact of your ideas because they actively engage listeners in the communicative exchange. This is what the authors say in the book on page 172. Now, what does that mean? This is an important statement. The reason why I read it verbatim from the book is because this is an important statement. What does it mean? It means that visuals can help you because they are sucking your audience into the process. By looking at the image, by seeing the video that I show you, or a picture that I present to you, or a picture that I draw on a board, or a visual aid that I hold in my hand, you are becoming a part of my speech because you're connecting not just with my words, but actually with an object or an item or something that I'm showing you. And your brain starts working in a whole different way. And it can become much more powerful, much more persuasive. So if I want to show to you something, have you ever seen those commercials where people show you money? I've seen this commercial just this last week, okay? So I'm traveling and I'm flipping through the channels, and this commercial comes on about saving money for auto insurance, okay? And it's a very simple commercial. It says like, hey, call this number and see if you can save. You can save 10%, you can save 15%, you can save 25%, who knows, maybe you can save even more. So they're trying to get people to call, and then at the end of the commercial, they flash a stack of cash, and they say, you can save hundreds of dollars. Well, if you know most people how much auto insurance costs, yeah, you could probably save hundreds of dollars, but probably not a pile of cash. So they show you a pile of cash, and I mean like a huge pile of cash. And the truth is, nobody's going to save that much money. Yeah, you may save a couple $100 if you get a good deal on insurance. Let's say you have a really bad insurance, and let's say you get something better. Maybe you save $200, maybe $300, maybe $400. But certainly not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, not like a pile of money. But they want to show you a pile of money. So by flashing that little pile of money, what they're doing is they're trying to entice you to call. And they're not saying you're going to save that much, but they're kind of implying it. And so that visual aid of showing you a stack of cash, a stack of $100 bills, actually is supposed to work to convince people to call. And of course, many people do call. Why? Because it works. Otherwise, they wouldn't be using that in a commercial. So the idea is that by showing an image like that, especially when you try and persuade people, you are pulling them into this conversation. You're sucking them into your dialogue with them, and you're showing them a visual image that can stimulate. Okay? Seeing a lot of money, people can say, I want it, so now I'm going to call that number. So that's the idea. Now, an important point that the author makes on the very bottom of this page, 172, is that good visuals have to be adapted to cultural expectations. and they have to enhance both your credibility and your persuasiveness. You see, the truth is, and I'm really happy about this book highlighting this idea, because not every culture reacts the same way to the same imagery. I've learned this in a variety of different ways, so simply observing people, how some people react to a particular image one way, and another culture looks at it, and they don't see what the other culture sees. If it's humorous, other culture will not see the humor. If it's offensive, other culture will not see that it's offensive. They'll actually think it's good. Why? Because symbols and items we talked about, they don't mean the same things across cultures. And so that's why you have to be very careful in how you use visual media and how you portray things. So it's just absolutely different. So like, for example, how many people have seen logos that or images that companies use in their websites that create a world map or show you a globe? For example, how many companies use a globe as a part of their logo? Well, you know, in the globe we have two hemispheres, right? And so you could show the Americas, or you could show Europe and Asia. Well, guess what? Most of the globe pictures made by Americans show the Americas. And if it's a European designer who designed that logo, it's going to show the Europe part, and it's going to show Asia and that part of the world. So depending on where you come from, you're going to use that part of the globe to communicate to people the idea that, hey, we're global. We're doing something across the whole world. Except your world is centered either on this or on that. Because you got to pick a side, because you can't show it because it's not 3D, right? It's just a flat logo, it's printed, so you have to show one side. And that's what people do. They pick a side of the globe they want to show. So, you know, this is what I mean by a lot of times media is very cultural, and how we think reflects in how we depict things, and that's an important angle to consider if you're going to be using media. In some cultures, certain items, certain objects, animals, whatever, can be portrayed as positive or negative, right? Tell me, you know, for example, what culture you come from. Is there an animal that's considered to be like a negative animal? Like if you wanted to call somebody a name and you would use an animal to call them, what animal would that be in your culture? Pig. A pig. So if you want to call a person, you know, so what does it mean? When you call a person a pig in your culture, what does that mean? What does that say about them?
Someone who's fat or big.
Fat or big. Okay, good. So like in America, if you call somebody a pig, it means a person who doesn't take care of themselves. Somebody who's dirty and unshaven, and their clothes is all ratty, and they're disgusting because their food is coming out of their mouth or something like that. You know, they look like a pig because pigs don't care what they look like. They roll around in the mud all day long, right? So like if a person looks really bad in America, they would say, well, you look like a pig. You got ketchup and mustard running down your shirt. You look terrible, you know. So in your culture, like, you know, pig would be just, you know, an attractive person or something like that. Okay. Any other animals that people use to pick on somebody if they want to call somebody? Look, a lot of cultures have these kind of images. How about calling somebody a dog? Would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
Korean is bad thing. Yeah, sometimes bad thing, sometimes very good thing.
Sometimes very good thing.
Yeah, because 추임새를 뭐라 그래야 되지? I think English is I like as bad word is very big like.
Yes.
Korean same thing is
Slang. So
yeah, slang is
slang.
yeah.
So a dog can be good, except when you use it in a good way.
Yeah, good way, sometimes bad way.
Yeah, so it's like saying something is good or something bad, it can actually mean the opposite. Because slang does that, it flips it around. So yes, you're absolutely right. It does that, that's good. So, but other animals that are considered to be good symbols, for example, in culture? Is there like an animal that everybody looks at and says, Ooh, that's like an animal that, like if I want to portray somebody smart or wise, what do I make them look like? Or powerful or strong. So like in America it would be like a tiger or a
Yes.
bear or something like that, right?
Oh, Korean is bear is bad thing.
Bad thing, see? See, in America they'll say he's as strong like a bull or strong like a bear or something like that. And that just means he's strong and powerful. It doesn't mean that he's smelly and big and hairy or something like that. It just means he's strong and powerful. So sometimes we use this imagery, you know. How about monkeys? Are monkeys considered to be a good symbol or a bad symbol?
It depends. Sometimes it means being smart,
Okay.
and sometimes it means like mean and tricky.
Mean and tricky, that's good. So this is tricky, kind of like I can't just compare somebody to a monkey. That could be a scary thing, right? Because I'll tell you this: in America, if you compare somebody to a monkey, it's always a bad thing. There's no such thing as a good monkey. You know?
Chicken is bad thing.
Chicken is a bad thing. We like to eat it, but we don't like it. So you see, all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find an illustration that cultures use these symbols, and they're not all the same. They're not all the same across the board. So like, you know, there's no way to portray a monkey in American culture, for example, and make it good. Because monkeys in America are perceived as silly and crazy and mischievous, and they do all kinds of nonsense stuff, and they don't really serve any purpose. Nobody sees them doing anything except just being annoying or something like that. So calling somebody a monkey could be actually very offensive here in America. So there was a commercial that a Japanese company made that made a lot of people very, very angry. It was right after elections, right after Obama got elected, and it was a cell phone commercial, and they were trying to get people to change carriers, like to change from one company to another. So they had a picture of a monkey in a suit going out and screaming and yelling, change, 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 and everybody's showing placards, and it looked like a political rally. It looked too much like a presidential campaign. Well, if you know, Barack Obama ran on the slogan, change. That was his slogan. So in America, the idea of black people and monkeys, that's what people want to call black people. If somebody wanted to really mock a black person, they would call him a monkey. And so that was very, very offensive. So when African Americans saw that commercial, they got really upset. I mean, they are living in Japan and they're seeing a commercial and they get really upset. So that was like an example of really culturally insensitive commercial that people who made it had no idea that that was culturally insensitive, because in their culture, monkeys are actually a good symbol. They're wise, they're smart, you know, they're emulated. So, but in African American experience, it's always a bad symbol. It's mocking, it's derogatory. So making it look like it was like Barack Obama or something like that because he's black, it was like a huge problem, and people got really offended. So anyway, that's just an example. Now, moving on. Let's see. Let's move to next page, 173. Some of the visual objects that you can use, there are different categories, there are different types of visual objects. You can use actual objects and props. You've seen me use a bottle of water last time to tell you, you know, how you can demonstrate things, how you can appeal to people's senses, right? Remember, I held up a bottle and I drank from it and made you thirsty. That's the kind of an idea that what you would see to communicate to people with a visual aid. You could hold something up simply and talk to people about it, and that becomes a very effective visual object. You can use your own body as a media, as a presentation. If I wanted to show you certain karate moves or something like that, right? I can actually demonstrate them, right? If I wanted to show you how to properly save a person's life by doing a CPR, I can demonstrate it by using a body, right? So you can use your own body to as a visual aid as well. That's possible. And it's actually a very effective thing to do because it's always with us. So let's see. You can use photographs. There's tricks about using photographs. I have seen people use photographs in presentations, and there's a right way and there's a wrong way. Like for example, I'm in this auditorium of about 100 people, and somebody brought some photographs and they wanted to share that. So you know what happened is they took a little stack of photographs and they gave it to the person in front row, and they were talking about those photographs. Well, guess what? By the time those photographs made it around to the back, speech was over. So people in the back never got to see them. They have no idea what they were talking about. So what happened is you lost control by handing them to a person. So making multiple copies is better. Enlarging them is better. Sending, if you need to show people an actual piece of evidence or photograph they need to see, make multiples and send them everywhere so people can share and they can see. That's way, way more effective than trying to give people a stack of photographs, because then one person is going to hold on to them and sit and watch them and look at them while you're talking, not even caring that anybody else needs to see them. And that's what's going to happen. So photographs can be tricky, but they can be effective. Why? Because it's a visual aid. Now, if you are using any kind of media, if you are using photographs, if you're using visual imagery, it's always good to give credit, especially in a business world. If you're going to be working in a business environment in any sort of an official capacity, you're making a presentation, you want to use an image, you want to make sure that that image is not owned by anybody. Because here's a problem. You use an image that's owned by somebody, they can go after you. And if you work for that company, they can go after that company. So it's very, very important on official presentations, official documents. Whatever you do in your personal life doesn't matter. But if you're making a presentation for a company or something like that, or you're making a commercial, or you're making an advertising, or you're printing a flyer, you can't just grab image from the internet and use it. Why? Because it belongs to somebody. Somebody made it, and it's possible that it's copyrighted, actually. You can't use a photograph just like that, unless it is specifically stated that it's free to use. And there are places online that you can use that. Not every website that offers free photographs is actually free. There are a lot of websites where you can buy a membership and you're actually buying a license. And then there are a lot of places that let you have it for free. Why? Because the author says, I release it for free. And so those are safe and good. There are websites like Wikimedia Commons, for example, that I use all the time, that has lots of images that are absolutely public domain, and the license for showing them is simply giving credit. That's all. But you can even use them and modify them, edit them, because they are free. So, and that's important. Also, if you're going to be using a media, you've got to know how you're going to use it, how you're going to connect things. That's why earlier in class I told you, make sure if you're bringing a Mac, bring a cord to plug in to the display so you can do that. Because if you're going to be using a media, you need to tell me, how you're going to do it. Like if you don't have a computer and you want to bring your flash drive, then fine, I'll pop it into mine. But make sure that I have the kind of software that can run that software, that presentation that you have before you do that. So don't make assumptions, because if you're giving a speech somewhere, don't assume that the people are going to have everything ready for you. Either you bring your own or you make sure they have it ahead of time. Okay, another type of media that is very effective, and a lot of people use it, it's described on page 175. It says videotapes, DVDs, films, and video streaming. Now, I don't know anybody who uses videotapes anymore. I guess some people might. There are some old things that are depicted on videotapes. We're much more digital these days. In fact, many people are not even using DVDs anymore. Even that is going away. So we're going to so much more digital and streaming culture. So that's normal part of the progress. But basically, the digital world that we have does not limit us from capabilities. If we have something old, we can always digitize it. We can always convert it into an MP4 file and put it on YouTube and stream it the next time we show a presentation, because everywhere we work we have Wi-Fi. So, but keep in mind that as you use visual media, and this is a particular danger with videos. Videos are especially dangerous. They will do a better job than you do. If use a video. The video can be 100 times more exciting than you are. So you're giving a speech and everybody likes your video and they think you stink. How good is that? What did you just do to yourself? You created a competition and the competition won. So if you're going to use a video, make sure that you can support the video, that you don't ever stop being the focus as the speaker, and the video is there to help you, not to outdo you. So that is a real danger. So using visual media like videos can be a problem. So whenever people use video, a lot of times it's distracting. That's usually when people start paying attention to the moving pictures on the screen and stop paying attention to the speaker. So if that's your design, if that's what you want to do for whatever period of time, that's okay. But keep in mind, if that's something you're going to do all the time, you're actually going to lose people. They're not going to focus on you because you are not as exciting as those moving pictures. There's a reason why movies are so popular. There's a reason why video is taking over our world. So keep that in mind. It's very, very effective. But again, it needs to be used properly. And there's a right way and there's a wrong way of using that. Okay. You can use drawings. You see me use drawings on a board all the time. I'll draw a little picture of a tree or hills or flatlands or, or I draw a skeleton of a fish to teach you about the speech outline, whatever. I'll draw whatever pictures I have, and they're not perfect, right? It's not like I'm Picasso right here, but they get my point across, right? And that's the idea. So you can use drawings. You can use all sorts of images that you put up on a board. If you can draw, sometimes that's a really great thing. Just keep in mind you got to draw fast, otherwise you lose the people. If you take too long to draw a very detailed picture on the board, people will tune out. Okay. In some situations, drawings are fine. In some situations, they're not. If you're making a business presentation, I would say don't draw. Use a pre-drawn images that you project onto a screen. It's a little bit more professional. So projections is another possible situation. You can project video, you can project still images. There's a lot of places where you can still use projectors, but again, the tricky thing is make sure your projector works with your computer and everything ahead of time. Sometimes we just have screens. I prefer screens, but projectors, some people project onto the walls, and that's fine. So overhead projectors that people have used in the past, I don't know if you've seen those or not, where you kind of have a lamp and you place something and it shoots it up on a wall. That's like the ancient version, of the LED projectors that we have today. So that's still in use. Some people still use those, but we're way past that technologically. As you show your images, one of the types of images that you can use, and this is very effective in certain contexts, not in all contexts, but in certain contexts, is graphs. How many of you guys know about graphs? Have you ever used a graph? Have you ever done a graph in your life for whatever reason? I mean, usually when you take algebra and things like that, and when you take math, they teach you graphs. They teach you how to do that. Why? Because it's an important way of measuring something. Graphs are great when you need to show a relationship between something and something, okay? In math, there's the x and the y, right? The vertical and the horizontal. And so those two lines are going to show you trajectories. So for example, stock market uses graphs all the time, right? Have you seen the stock market, how it moves like this all the time? That's a use of a graph. So they're showing to you relationship of different particular stocks or market indexes, depending on what's going on that day. Are they going up? Are they going down? Are they staying the same? So numerical data is very, very easy to represent with graphs, which is why stock market uses graphs. But there's more than one kind of graph out there. Besides just the little moving line, right? There are other types. And so the textbook presents you with a whole array of them. You have the bar graphs, the line graphs, the pie graphs, and pictographs. And so the next page actually gives you examples of each. The bar graphs basically give you, again, the relationship between two or more different figures. The line graphs between two or more different variables, whatever they may be. The pie graphs are percentages. They're really, really helpful. I find those really cool. And pictographs show the same idea in pictures. So flip on the next page with me if you're following along. On 178, 179, there's examples of all of those. The bar graphs show the relationship, like for example, how much something grows from year to year. That's what they're showing here. The line graphs, of course, very common to show the data, again, how things react. But the pie graph is kind of cool. It's a totally different way of representing something. It's on percentages. You know, such and such percentage of something is this. And so sometimes it may be hard for you to imagine what's 10%. But when I take like a circle and I take 10% of that circle, now you could visualize what 10% is. Now, and with even numbers, it's a little bit easier, but the more uneven numbers are, and the more categories there are on your pie graph, the better it is. So that's a very effective way. I like it. To me, I'm a visual person. I tend to enjoy pie graphs very, very well. Now, pictographs, I never got into those, but they work. You can represent things with pictures. And so they don't seem to do the job for me, but for other people they do. So there are different ways of doing different graphs. Beside the graphs, there are tables, there are charts. You can use tables by simply drawing columns, you know, and if you can do that quickly during a speech, that's fine too, because that makes your speech dynamic. If you have the data memorized and you kind of know it in your head, so you can do a quick little table and do that, and that's very effective. A quick little chart or something like that. If you have a complicated chart, don't try to draw it out ever. Just have it ready and project it on the screen and be done with it. But don't make it so detailed so that people cannot see. I've been to presentations where the letters and the numbers are so small that I can't read them. So if that ever happens, if you have to show a really complicated chart or a really complicated graph, print it out and hand it to the audience so that they can see it up close and personal and follow along with what you're saying. If it's really important for you to show, and you want people to see, but it won't fit on the screen very easily or make it hard to see, print it out, hand it out, do a handout for people. It is 1,000 times better than having everyone in the room squint to try to see those numbers, because they're important. They all want to know, but they can't read the numbers off of the screen, off of the wall. So that's, you know, a good pointer to know. Flowcharts, flip charts, or other charts that I want you to know about. People use them in presentations. They're popular. Flip charts are great because they use separate sheets of paper. You just kind of flip the paper over and go to the next page. So there's software for that today. So I like to use computers that do the same thing. But people who do like paper, they can mess with that. But even your Gmail suite has a program that does that very function. Flowcharts are good, a little bit different. Again, they show relationships. Have you ever seen a flowchart where you have something and then there's an arrow pointing to something and out of that comes something else, and it shows connections between different parts of the company. For example, an organizational chart in a company is a flowchart. Have you ever seen an organizational chart where you have the president, then you have several vice presidents, and under them are different managers and different offices and departments, and then it spreads out to individual company divisions and things like that. And so it shows you who is connected to who and who answers to whom. And so it's a relationship chart. That's what it does. But it shows the flow of information or the flow of authority, whatever you want to focus on, you know, however people report or whatever the purpose of your organizational chart is. That's usually a very effective way of showing to people, all right, you're getting a new job. This is how our company works, and this is where you are. You're on this chart. This is where you fit in. So there are some people underneath you that you're responsible for, and there are some people above you that you're responsible to. And that's where you fit into the team, okay? Another type of a visual aid that people can use from time to time are models. You can use a prop, you can use an object, but some people actually make a model of something. It's in architectural design that's very common, where people actually make a model of a building and bring it and pitch the project to somebody. And they actually make a miniature mock-up building, that's something they want to build. So that happens. So you can have a replica of an object, a model. So a globe, for example, that every single one of you knows is a good example of a model of the world, right? So it is a model. It is something that's shrunk down in size that everybody can hold in their hands and understand.